We had an amazing event at the University of California, Berkeley yesterday, and just as expected, the peaceful, tolerant, definitely loving and caring libs showed up to love and care on us as they always do, with riots, firecrackers, and assaulting police officers. Also, the BBC had to get rid of one of their top 2 people. Why did they have to make such a drastic change, or why did those people resign? Find out. Also, happy Veterans Day to all of you who served. We really appreciate your service to this country. We'll talk to Monica Page about what the president has done for the veterans over the course of his last 2 administrations. All that and more coming up on this episode of Turning Point Tonight. My name is Jobob. Thanks so much for tuning in. Together, we are charting the course of America's cultural comeback. This is Turning Point Tonight. Remember, you can email the show anytime you want, tpt@tpusa.com. We'd love to see your emails, thoughts, comments, concerns, even criticisms. We're not libs. We accept criticisms here. May not read them, but we do accept them at tpt@tpusa.com. Also, go subscribe to our YouTube channel, which is growing by leaps and bounds. And there's exclusive content there that you just can't get here because we don't have enough time to talk about all of the things that we want to talk about. So youtube.com, Turning Point Tonight with Jobob, in case you really want to spell out the entire thing. But also Rumble, Facebook, X, Instagram, all of the social media platforms. You should follow on all of those to never miss a segment or a beat on what we're doing here on Turning Point Tonight. Like I mentioned at the beginning, yesterday we were at the University of California, Berkeley, a home to welcoming people who accept all ideas from all political fronts. LOL JK, no, it's a bunch of blue-haired crazy people who decided they were going to destroy their own place. They live here. They're the ones that go to this school, or well, in all honesty, they probably don't. Probably a bunch of outside agitators who came in and said, hey, we hate these people. And then we ask why, and they go, well, I don't know. But I did want to highlight some of the issues that come up with these events, especially when you're on unfriendly territory, as we were yesterday at the University of California, Berkeley. And in order to put this in context, I just want to note the fact that this happens every single time we are at a UC school. There's the University of California system, and then there's the Cal State system, and then there's a bunch of community colleges and all of those that make up the California higher education system. The UC system specifically has been the most gigantic pain in the butt to work with. And I'm sorry if this is going to make it more difficult for our own Turning Point staff that sets up these events, but I do feel like this is necessary for people to know how difficult these events are made specifically by the people on the campuses. Not necessarily entirely the administration, but more specifically, all of the peaceful, non-agitative protesters that show up outside the events. To give you some context, about a year ago, we were on the University of California, Los Angeles, UCLA. If you were at that event, you may have realized, well, there's not a ton of people here. I think it was a room that sat like 800 people and only about 400 people were able to get into the building. That is because the University of California, Los Angeles made it so difficult for people to show up to the event that it was difficult for us to fill the room. And what I mean by that is that the university required every single person to put their name on a list with all of their information and then closed off that sign-up list a week before the event. And what kind of ramifications does that have? Generally speaking, when I go speak at college campuses, especially when I was speaking with Charlie, I would text friends and family that happen to be in the area probably a day before or the day of, and they'd say, yeah, sure, we can make it, or we can't make it. In this particular case, my mom and her friend and my sister, I think, were all going to come to that event and were on their way to UCLA when I was told, we actually can't get them in. I said, no, this is my mom. They said, no, we can't get them in because the school has restricted access to anybody who didn't already fill out a form a week ago. So when you look around at the empty seats and wonder, why is this empty? Charlie's a massive deal. Turning Point is a massive deal. That's why. If ever there's an empty seat in the building, almost all times it has to do with the school and the administration and the protocols that they've put in, specifically, in my opinion, to make it difficult for conservatives to come to events that they are legally required to have on their campus. Also, the University of California, Davis, where I had glass smashed in on my face. I should have pulled that clip, Glenn. Sorry, maybe we'll find out how to get it in post. But that area also made it extremely difficult for people to get into the event because the Antifa protesters, I call them rioters, were pretty much blocking every single entrance and then ultimately attacked the building and smashed a glass door right where I was standing, and that made national news 2 or 3 years ago. And just to give you a taste of how the administration generally feels about Turning Point events, I wanted to play this clip. It's rather long, but I'm going to stop and pause in between, from Chancellor Gary May, the identity-hired DEI thunderhead who runs the University of California, Davis, who he released a video the day that we were supposed to go to that UC school. Play this cut 3 and we'll stop intermittently to make some corrections to the very, very clearly and abundantly wrong things that this DEI chancellor said. Play this cut 3.
Many of you have reached out to me and others regarding tonight's event organized by the registered student organization Turning Point USA, or TPUSA, at UC Davis. Thank you for sharing your distress at a student group hosting a speaker who is a well-documented proponent of misinformation and hate, and who has advocated for violence against transgender individuals.
Okay, first things first, none of that is true. And by the way, notice how he says, I know that this guy, this is Charlie speaking, by the way, is a known person that just dispels misinformation and hate and has advocated for violence against transgender individuals. When did that happen, sir? Hey, Gary, do you have any evidence that that actually happened? Or are you just kind of repeating the same things over and over again and don't necessarily think all the way through? Because again, you're hired because of your DEI capabilities, not because your actual brain functionality. Actually, in this particular case, the Sacramento Bee also wrote an article saying that Charlie said, well, we should commit violence against trans people. And with the threat of a lawsuit, I think they retracted all of those statements. And yet, Gary here has yet to apologize for releasing a video that was blatantly and utterly false. The claims that he were making was sick, ridiculous, and nonsensical. Still has yet to apologize. Still holds his job here, by the way, has not retracted anything, and continues to lead a university into, this is probably too judgmental, eternal damnation. But I'm also kind of kidding semi. Let's go on with Gary here as he espouses hate against a group that has nothing but love for the people at that university.
As a campus that is committed to our principles of community, UC Davis stands with our transgender and non-binary Aggies in opposition to this hateful and divisive messaging. UC Davis did not invite this individual and is not sponsoring this event. Our chief campus counsel provided me with information and guidance for campuses in this situation. First, the University of California policy permits registered student organizations such as TPUSA to reserve university facilities and invite speakers of their choice. Under UC policy, campuses may not prohibit student organizations such as TPUSA from inviting these speakers, even if the speaker's intended speech is loathsome and hurtful to me and to others in our campus community.
All right, DEI Gary, so let's dig into that a little bit. Instead of saying, hey, all of you people that don't like this person, here are the standards that we uphold at this university. We support free speech, and you know, maybe we agree, maybe we don't agree, but we support free speech, and that is what we are about here at the university. Instead, Gary says, well, hey, we all know how terrible and awful this person is, but we are legally obligated to allow them to host events. I'm not sure if that's the right posture you want to set to budding young individuals who are trying to make it in the world, Gary. Maybe instead of saying, oh yeah, your grievances are totally justified, and don't worry, I hate him too, but I have no other legal recourse here, so we have to let him speak. Maybe instead say, look, you agree or you disagree, that is not the question. We need to uphold a culture of free speech, and that's why they are allowed to do what they are doing. In California specifically, the Free Speech on Campus Act, AB 1571, which was enacted in 2020, reinforces this by requiring campuses to adopt and publicize policies affirming free speech expression and prohibiting content-based restrictions on events. But again, Gary doesn't want to support the culture of free speech. He wants to say, don't worry, kids, I hate this guy too, for no justifiable reason, by the way. And I'm only allowing him to speak because he's specifically required to by law, or I'm required to by law to be able to have him here. Thanks, Gary. I'm not entirely sure how much left of this there is. We'll play it on until I've decided I've had enough with this crackpot.
With respect to concerns related to violence, UC policy permits denial of requests if the speaker will present a clear and present danger to the campus. And council notes the policy explicitly states the campus carries a heavy burden in justifying such a denial under these circumstances. Our council also notes that there is a similarly heavy burden for criminal prosecution for incitement of violence. In short, while I abhor the inflammatory speech of this speaker, UC policy permits the student organization to invite the speaker. Please be assured that we are monitoring the event closely to determine if a threat or incitement develops that meets that threshold or violates other campus policies. I understand and share your objections to a speaker whose rhetoric is offensive and clearly intended to shock and provoke.
Yeah, okay, Gary, then effectively saying, hey, Turning Point and Charlie might incite violence, but don't worry, we will be on top of that. Hey, Glenn, sorry, I know we haven't queued it up in the live section of this, but maybe we'll throw it in the B-roll. I want to play you this video of me on that campus, kind of just filming the protests from inside, where the people that he's trying to protect from the incitement of violence he's claiming we're going to do actually commit the violence. Thank you, Gary. Thank you so much for making sure that the Turning Point people don't incite violence, while instead you just let your students run rampant. And by the way, one person was arrested at this particular date. I'm not entirely sure if they were ever charged with anything, but it wasn't even related to this, where again, I got glass thrown in my face. But that is the culture that we go to when we go to these college campuses. We are not only up against the crazy radicals outside that are willing to tear down their campus, but we're also up against, generally speaking, in certain cases, a hostile administration who hates us and says so out loud on video the day of our events. That is what we're up against, and that's what effectively happened in Berkeley. There was no big video that basically kind of demonized us beforehand, put out by the administration, which I guess, thank you for that, I think. But at the same time, we were met with several other obstacles, including the ticketing. Just so you know, I'm giving you kind of the behind the scenes scope here. When we do these free events, they're obviously free events, and the venue only holds a certain amount of people. Hopefully, you've never been in the position where you've had to be turned away from a Turning Point event, but unfortunately, it happens a lot because of how popular Turning Point events are. No problem. When the venue is full, it's a first come, first served basis. The venue is full and people have to go elsewhere or are able to watch it on their phones or some other overflow room, depending on the particular event. But not in the case of UC Berkeley. In the case of UC Berkeley, they restricted the tickets limited to exactly the number of seats that were in the theater. Okay, well, what's so bad about that? Well, do you think for a second that the crazy blue-haired libs aren't going to register for the vast majority of those tickets and then not show up? Because what they're doing is then taking the place of someone who actually would have wanted to come to the event, because if yesterday or the day before, or even the day before that, you went onto the website trying to get tickets for yourself, it would have had a big fat sold out, you cannot come into this venue. In other words, all of the libs tried as best they could to register for as many tickets as possible and not show up, which, by the way, what a chicken-ass way to live your life. If you disagree with someone, go to the event. It should be well known that if you disagree, not only do you get a microphone, but you get to go to the front of the line. So in what way are you furthering your progressive ideas by just having the theater sit half empty? Like, what is that actually doing? But again, these are all of the things that we have to deal with when we go to these campuses. I'm realizing halfway through this, I'm actually pretty fired up about this because it's so maddening to see an event that, honestly, it was fantastic. The events team and the productions team that puts on the event does a fantastic job. My only gripe is the fact that not enough people were able to get in because of the ticket fakery that the university and the school kids pulled on us, and the fact that rioters were effectively blocking all of the entrances. There was a couple scary moments outside. I'm sure you've seen it. I'm sure you're watching it on the B-roll right now. But at the end of the day, those two components are huge hindrances to people coming inside and seeing the truth. And to get to the main point here, you only do this sort of thing if your ideas are so bad that you can't argue them in good faith. Your ideas are so bad that you have to resort effectively to a heckler's veto because that's the only recourse you have. Because, like I said, your ideas and your ideology are horrible. Now, to get into some of the coverage of how this all panned out at the University of Berkeley yesterday, not all of it was terrible. The College Fix actually wrote something rather nice. They said, and I'm pulling clips that reference me because it was, I don't want to bury the lead here, it was myself, Frank Turek, and Rob Schneider yesterday at the event. The event kicked off, this is from the College Fix, with Turning Point contributor Jobob, who congratulated the audience for making it into the auditorium. Then they do a nice quote of me saying, hey, I'm so glad that you're here. And I genuinely was. If you watched last night, I was genuinely glad that all the people that did make it in were able to make it in. Some of the news outlets were not nearly as charitable and nice. And I'll get to the part about me, which I think you'll find hilarious. But the Daily Californian, I'm going to read a lot of this because it's worth noting. Hundreds of protesters and police officers armed in riot gear clashed in a series of tense confrontations and arrests. On UC Berkeley's campus yesterday during the Turning Point USA, TPUSA's final stop on the national tour Monday night, 5 individuals were arrested in relation to various altercations with police and protesters, in addition to 4 students who were arrested early Monday morning for an anti-TPUSA art installation in the plaza. In other words, of all of this violence that you're seeing on the screen, of all of these smoke grenades, of all of the chaos, of all of the shoving, of all of the throwing the bike racks at the cops, speeding through the streets, 5 individuals were arrested, and I think they were because of individual fights. The demonstrations, goes on the Daily Californian, staged in opposition to the TPUSA event, started around 4 p.m. Monday. Between some geographical areas you don't actually matter about, protesters began chanting 1, 2, 3, 4, Turning Point, no more. A call to elimination. That's fantastic, you peace and loving, tolerant dum-dums. 5, 6, 7, 8, USA's a fascist state. Okay, again, we have a problem with the definition of fascism, but we won't linger on that for too long. And they were toting signs saying, Bears bash fascists. Wow. Well, if you're calling people fascists especially inaccurately and then saying that bears, the mascot of the California Berkeley University, are going to smash us, in what way is that not incitement of violence? And TPUSA, turn around, go home. I actually don't have a problem with that one. If you want to chant that, go ahead. Again, if you're protesting our events, I wish I could purchase your time because clearly you're not spending it wisely enough. This is what I thought was actually even more interesting. An Instagram post, student groups, including Student Organizing for Liberation, or CalSlaw, whatever their acronym is, it doesn't matter. These people don't matter. The Cal Young Democratic Socialists of America said they were disgusted by the campus's decision to shut down student spaces named after prominent civil rights figures to make way for speakers who, so basically they're saying, we are so mad that you opened up these spaces for speakers who regurgitated racist, transphobic, and misogynistic rhetoric. Okay, thanks, kids. Why don't you go back to class, learn what free speech is about, and maybe learn the fact that different ideas won't hurt you. They're just here to be a balancing point, honestly, in the University of California, Berkeley, that is not had elsewhere. And this is where I think it gets very funny. The whole thing is a build up to this. Is the California producer Glenn sent me this quote from the Daily Californian and said, Jobob, a far-right comedian and host of TPUSA's web series and also TV show. Generally speaking, you're probably watching this on the RAV channel, was the first speaker to take the stage with a number of racist and homophobic jokes. See, now that's where I draw the line. That is horrible and utter misinformation. My jokes are also misogynistic, xenophobic, bigoted, all of the other things that lives. All of my jokes are that. Don't corner me into just racist and homophobic jokes. I do so much more. But again, we're all kidding here because everything about this, outside the fantastic job that our security did, that the police did, that our events people did, all of this is a joke. The entire system that promotes burning cars in the streets, throwing bike racks at police officers is a joke. And honestly, that's why we need to keep going. I mentioned yesterday in the speech that the reason I love coming to the Bay Area is because the Bay Area is gorgeous. The Bay Area is beautiful. The only problem is the libs that have ruined the entire area. I think the Northern California area, the Bay Area specifically, is not proof that liberalism doesn't work. It's actually proof that liberalism is working exactly by design to tear down Western civilization and start from scratch and become a more Marxist society. This is exactly what it was intended to do. It was exactly intended to disallow any sort of speech that you don't agree with, be so tolerant that you're tolerant of anything except for disagreement. Especially in a place that has banned plastic straws but not fentanyl. The overwhelming consensus among everybody in the room is that this place is great and needs to be saved. It is in desperate need of repair, and that is why Turning Point will continue to go to all of these schools that act in such aggression towards us, because the truth needs to be said, and many of these areas need to be saved. Thank you for participating and listening in my long-winded rant about yesterday's honestly fantastic event outside the libs trying to shut it down, as they often do. I appreciate you sticking with me. Let us know any of your thoughts, emails, comments, concerns, tpt@tpusa.com. Also, go subscribe to our YouTube channel where you get all of these segments in bite-sized forms, as well as exclusive content that you're not going to see anywhere else. TPT, Turning Point tonight on YouTube. We'll be right back. I want to talk to Morgonn McMichael about the BBC's top 2 resigning in disgrace over their edits of President Trump's January 6th speech, as well as being a college liberal is just so difficult on college campuses, says a New York Times opinion writer. Don't go away. We'll be right back after the break. Welcome back to Turning Point Tonight, where together we are charting the course of America's cultural comeback through the mockery of terrible lib ideas. TPT@tpusa.com is the email address if you'd like to send us your thoughts, comments, concerns, even criticisms. We're not the libs. We don't want to censor your criticisms. Send them to tpt@tpusa.com. Also, go subscribe to our YouTube channel, which is growing by leaps and bounds, and you don't want to be left out not seeing what is on the YouTube channel, because there's exclusive stuff that we can't fit into this short period of time that we have together here on Real America's Voice. Let's bring in Turning Point contributor Morgonn McMichael, who, if you notice, just by looking, you're literally glowing. There's a reason for that. Morgonn announced that she is pregnant. Her and her husband are having their first baby, and we can literally see you glowing in the actual video.
We have the pregnancy glow. We're so excited and thankful. God truly is just so good and is so faithful, and we couldn't be more excited to start a family.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited for you guys. This is very another right-wing extremist will be joining the American population.
Joining our personal militia, actually.
Yes. Yeah, there we go. So Morgonn, a lot has been said recently over the last couple of days about the BBC. Now, arguably, the BBC is the biggest news outlet on the planet. For some reason, a bunch of people think that like they're this totally nonpartisan, they just stick to the facts and don't, it's like the NPR of the world. Like libs think NPR is like, they're just speaking the truth. Like, no, you guys are a bunch of biased wackadoos. Well, BBC is in a new set of turmoil because 2 of their bigwigs just resigned over the editing of a documentary that came out a year ago now. And it just now came to light, like, hey, you guys edited this really poorly. Morgonn, I want to play this clip for you, get your reaction, and then kind of, dig into a little bit of what the BBC actually does instead of being unbiased. Play this cut 3.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and I'll be there with you, and we fight. We fight like hell. We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and we're going to cheer on our brave senators and congressmen and women.
Pretty selectively edited. I don't think I set it up very well. The first clip was what they put out. The second was the actual clip that was put out. But since then, Tim Davie, the BBC general director and the top head of their news division, had to resign because of that. Morgan, your just broad overall thoughts on the idea that, one, people think that the BBC is like right down the middle, unbiased news, and two, why do libs feel like they can keep getting away with this stuff? The internet is forever.
I mean, I think BBC actually stands for the biased broadcasting channel. So they clearly can't actually have a nonpartisan, just factual statement on their networks ever. And it's actually funny because when I see a story like this come out of, executives needing to resign, it's like, why couldn't they just say the truth and do the right thing in the first place? It's like, no, they have to continuously push a narrative, and time again we see examples of edited clips, of twisting words. And I myself was actually a victim of the BBC biased broadcasting channel, because I was actually in a documentary that Turning Point USA was featured in 2 years ago, talking about American women on the right in America. In the conservative movement, and the entire documentary was meant to paint conservative women in America as completely oppressed and lost and just following Turning Point Charlie, to death's end, basically. But, when you see this clip of Trump edited, it's just absolutely ridiculous, because clearly he was not inciting violence. This is something that conservatives have had to fight for since 2021. And I'd like to note that the clip that was edited was a whole 1 hour of the speech apart to make it fit their narrative.
No, it's like you're going out of your way to make something completely untrue in response to what actually happened. Interestingly enough, Morgan, the BBC is funded by the taxpayer, so effectively the same thing PBS and NPR were. And you kind of have to pay for a license there. The licensing fees are what actually makes about 65% of the BBC's overall total income. And if you don't pay those in certain areas, you face up to like $1,000 fine, including imprisonment, if you avoid the courts trying to implement those fines. Considering that NPR and PBS have been defunded, when the licensing comes up again in 2026, which I think it runs out there with the way that they set up their broadcasting system, do you think the British people and the people in the UK are going to continue to put up with this, especially in light of the horribly misleading edits they've made in this documentary, but I'm sure many others?
I want to say 100% yes. I hope that the people in Britain can stand up against their corporations and actually clap back, like we've seen in America with PBS and NPR, as we currently have an administration who's actually getting things done in our country that benefit the American people and kind of getting rid of the political biases in the mainstream. But unfortunately, what we have seen, especially with the immigration problems that are hitting London and the citizens not really standing up as much as I think they should be to Parliament and many other of their government systems, I am kind of on the fence of like, if anything will happen, because I think so many people, especially not just in England, but all of Great Britain and all of Europe, are kind of brainwashed. And I think we're seeing more positive in the more conservative movement, I guess, over there, but I don't think it's enough quite yet.
My hope is that the British people reject this. My concern is that they end up changing the platform to the IBC, the Islamic Broadcasting Company, which I think actually might be more likely considering their new demographic that they have. Speaking of lib media and lib outlets, I thought this was a hilarious opinion piece in the New York Times. Michelle Goldberg wrote a piece pretty much outlining a movie or a movie review about a new Julia Roberts movie where she plays a professor, and it's about the Me Too movement. And the plot of the movie isn't super important. What I thought was really interesting is that she basically dismissed the entire movie because she effectively was saying, well, you know how hard it is to be a liberal on college campuses nowadays because everything is right wing, and being a progressive in university is just the most difficult thing in America. Let me read you a quote. Now, at a moment of ferocious federal government repression of the campus left, After the Hunt, that's the movie title, is a bit silly, I can't read. is a bit of a silly anachronism. It's interesting mostly for what it inadvertently reveals about the seething resentments that help set the stage for today's right-wing crackdown. Morgan, you often go to college campuses and interact with the students there. You know, clearly it's super difficult to get through the crowds because every single person on college campuses is wearing MAGA hats. They all agree with President Trump and the MAGA agenda. That's your experience, correct?
Oh, totally. I mean, everyone on a college campus is a conservative. That's why Turning Point USA doesn't need to go on college campuses anymore, because we already fixed the problem. No, it is absolutely insane that a commentator for the New York Times is saying that it's hard to be a liberal on a college campus, when we have seen time and time again, for not even just the last decade, longer than that, how difficult it is to be a conservative on campus. And that's why even Turning Point USA exists. That's why Charlie's mission even exists in the first place. And honestly, if there's any liberal who is having a hard time on a college campus and feels threatened, it 100% is because they have some sort of secondary mental illness and are like a furry or transgender who can't stand to be around somebody who thinks differently than them.
Yesterday we were at Berkeley, and it's a weird thing to laugh about it because it's also so objectively horrible. But there were definitely photos of several furries over there chanting about how bad us over at Turning Point was, because you know, the entire university system, especially California, Berkeley, has been taken over by right-wing extremists. All 5% of them that are there. Morgan, I realize this is pretty early on, but as a soon-to-be new mother, I mean, actually, in my opinion, you already are a mother. Do you think 18 years from now you will be sending your child to an American university?
I go back and forth on this. 100% will be homeschooling in their younger years. Maybe they'll be going to classical Christian high school or a private Christian high school. College, we'll have to see about that. I don't really foresee the college campus atmosphere changing too much in the next 2 decades. I can pray, I can hope, but I want our kids to actually get a proper education and not have to take gender studies as a required course credit. So we'll just have to see where the cards lay.
I was going to say, my kids are a little bit older, but I think both of us can agree that our hope would be that colleges have become overly conservative. We're like, oh yeah, let's go ahead and send our kid there.
If every college was like Liberty and Hillsdale, then I think our country would be in a lot better place than we are now.
Really? Yeah, I would. One, I wouldn't have any doubt sending my kid there, and two, the overall trajectory of the country would be substantially better because you have people being educated in the right and appropriate way.
I think I may be able to make an excuse for maybe an SEC school.
Especially if football is involved, that you might be able to make an exception there, especially with those NIL deals and a mom who very much knows the media industry like the back of her hand. So that's I can understand that exception. Morgonn McMichael, congratulations. Everybody's excited for you. Thanks so much for joining, and really appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you so much, Jobob. See y'all next time.
Thank you. Coming up next here on Turning Point Tonight, we're going to check in with Turning Point's White House correspondent, Monica Page, on what the president did regarding veterans on this Veterans Day. TPT at TPUSA.com is the email. Also, go subscribe to our YouTube channel where you get exclusive content not seen on this show because we just don't have enough time to squeeze in everything we want to say. We will be right back after the break. Don't go away. Welcome back to Turning Point Tonight. We're together. We're charting the course of America's cultural comeback. TPT at TPUSA.com is the email. Also, go subscribe to our YouTube channel, which is growing by leaps and bounds, and you don't want to be left behind. Turning Point Tonight on YouTube. Let's check in with Turning Point's White House correspondent, Monica Page. Monica, thanks for joining us. Really appreciate you taking the minute.
Thanks so much, Jobob, and happy Veterans Day to all those who are watching. I know just a big fat thank you to everybody who's served this country, both our men and women.
Yes, the brave men and women that keep our country safe and continue the American experiment, because I think so many people have lost perspective of how unique our country is, and it's only because of the men and women who've served in our armed forces. Speaking of that, President Trump had a big day honoring veterans. Tell us what the president was up to today.
Yeah, very powerful speech. He did a wreath-laying ceremony at Arlington National Cemetery at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, which is something that he does every year and has done when he served his
Hmm.
first term. So it's a very moving moment. It really gives him a chance to show his appreciation for our veterans. And it's not just his words that really spoke volumes at this ceremony today, but it's also his actions that he's taken just over the past 8, 9 months that he's been in office plus. And even back in his first term as well. So remembering correctly here, he signed an executive order back in May to house up to 6,000 homeless veterans by 2028, providing services like substance abuse treatment, job trainings, more benefits accesses. The funds for this program that he is allocating for were directed from programs that were previously funding non-veteran services like migrant support. So he's prioritizing veterans in these high profile, these high need areas, cities across the country like Los Angeles, etc., New York. We saw the Home Loan Program Reform Act that we saw, which allocated $146 million to prevent foreclosures to our veterans, combating homelessness, healthcare access, improved call times and wait times, the VA opening 20 new healthcare facilities across the country, mental health, suicide prevention. So the president was really working in overdrive at the start of his second term, and even grandfathering in some of the policies that he pushed in his first term just to help our veterans and show them appreciation, because some of them may have felt like they were forgotten under the last administration.
Yeah, and the one prior to the first Trump administration too. I think it was great to see all the stuff that did in Trump 1, and Trump 2 I think is doing quite a bit more for our veterans, which is greatly appreciated by really everyone in the country. Tired turn of topic here. Monica, do you remember the term taco? Trump always chickens out, because apparently libs didn't understand negotiations. Hey, Trump shoots for the moon and then gets you to settle at a place where you're not comfortable with, but he's like, yeah, this is actually great. I'm thinking of a new term, Shaco. Schumer always chickens out. Because interestingly enough, so we hadn't been able to talk about the end of the shutdown, or at least the potential end of the shutdown, as the Senate passed something late Sunday night. We weren't here on this show yesterday, but we'll talk about it now with you. Schumer didn't get anything for it. So Schumer didn't actually get anything in terms of his negotiating standpoint. Libs are mad about it. What's next here with the with how the legislators are going to, one, fund the government, but also until like January 30th. So we're going to do this again in like 2 months.
Yeah, yes, exactly right, Jobob. I mean, we are one step closer to ending this shutdown. That's honestly felt like forever. I think we're at, 41 days now at this point. So we've had the small band of Senate Democrats that finally voted with Republicans to approve this funding measure and end this longest shutdown in U.S. history. Now, this measure, for those who maybe don't know, is not going to fund the Affordable Care Act or Obamacare. But what really made Democrats budge was the fact that they're switching their votes because federal food aid was being delayed. These airports delays were worsening, and hundreds of thousands of federal workers were continuing to go unpaid. So what's next? Question mark. Well, the biggest thing is now all eyes are going to be on tomorrow. So the huge vote is going to go to the House. So Republican leaders are very hopeful that it's going to pass tomorrow. I think it's going to be at 4 p.m. Eastern time before it is sent to President Trump's desk to be signed. But you're right. So we'll probably have to do this all over again January 30th. Unfortunately. But what I'm curious to see is how quickly things, or hopefully, will go back to normal, especially when it comes to flights. We've got Thanksgiving, we've got kids coming home from college, we've got people who are trying to just fly out to see family or just go to work, do work trips. We know the cuts to flights were like the 40th busiest airports all across the country. They're increasing a little bit to like 6% today, but still, like, that narrow recovery before Thanksgiving is very slim. So we'll see what happens. I don't know how quickly things are going to go back to normal. It's a step in the right direction, and I'm hoping change comes sooner rather than later.
Yeah, and speaking of veterans too, that's a big time, going home for the holidays if they're active duty or veterans in some sort of VA hospital that's away from their family. Their family can visit them, or they can visit their family, and that hopefully will happen as airports get kind of ramped up and rolling again. Monica Page, Turning Point's White House correspondent, thanks so much for taking the time. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. TPT at TPUSA.com is the email address if you'd like to send us your thoughts, comments, concerns, criticisms. Also, go subscribe to our YouTube channel. The Turning Point Tonight YouTube channel is growing by leaps and bounds. And look, you don't want to be the last person to the party. You don't want to miss out. You got to go to the YouTube channel, youtube.com. Turning Point Tonight is the channel. Also, our Rumble, X, Instagram, Facebook, all of the social media platforms. Go find us there. We'll be right back after the break to discuss Michelle Obama's hardship of being the first lady, as well as Kamala Harris duped us all. She was playing three-dimensional chess the whole time. We'll be right back after the break. Welcome back to Turning Point Tonight. We're together. We are charting the course of America's cultural comeback. TPT at TPUSA.com is the email address if you'd like to send your thoughts, comments, concerns, criticisms. Also, go to our YouTube channel and subscribe. Turning Point Tonight on YouTube, Rumble, X, Twitter, all of the social media platforms. I got to get a thing down in my head where I just name all of them out, but I haven't gotten there as of yet. Probably because I am so used to being duped by everyone and everything, including former Vice President Kamala Harris. She has played us all, and we all fell for it. She's playing three-dimensional chess. Her own words, by the way, Kamala Harris. Watch this video that's been making its way around the video, and afterward, join me in mocking it as much as we possibly can. Check this out.
I was aware of my opponent's strategy, and I wasn't about to fall prey or fall into those traps. And part of his strategy and those around him was to try and take me off our game and message. And I wasn't about to be distracted by those flames that he was trying to throw to get me away from my highest priority, which was talking to people about the economy and their well-being in terms of their financial well-being. And so I understood the game that was being played, and I made a decision that I wasn't going to get played. And
chess, not checkers. Got it.
chess, not checkers. Yeah, three-dimensional chess. I'm telling you,
Oh my gosh. Okay, so what you're saying, Kamala, is that you weren't thrown off your game? All of the campaign was her on her game, and she didn't get... No, say the opposite. By the way, you lost. It's one thing if you're winning and you decided to throw out, hey, this is what the strategy we used and we really got him. Don't say, no, he didn't throw me off my game at all. That was the best that I could possibly do. Give yourself some buffer, lady. Say, hey, no, like he threw all of his tricks at me and it was a tough shot, but we got thrown off a little bit and kind of went off direction. Then as a voter or as a viewer, I'd be like, oh, okay, that makes sense. But you're saying, no, that didn't happen? He wasn't able to throw you off your game? And so what we saw was your A game? I think this clip explains itself. He's basically saying, well, this is the best I had. He didn't throw me off my game. I gave it everything I had, intellectually speaking. I forget what day it was. All of these days have been a blur. I think the last 8 days I've been home 2 of them. And we'll be gone tomorrow. We'll be doing the show from the Turning Point headquarters tomorrow. Why am I saying that? I forget which day it was, but we were at the Megyn Kelly tour, I think in Jacksonville, so that must have been, it was Thursday of last week. And Megyn Kelly asked Michael Knowles, who has more IQ points or who is more intellectual, Kamala Harris or KJP? And I think the answer was, I have no idea, because I don't know if the numbers go into the negatives. I don't think he said that. Don't put words in his mouth. I don't think he said that specifically, but I think that's probably what he was thinking. And if I were to interpret his thoughts, then that's probably what I was thinking too. But Kamala, give yourself an out, dude. Also, all those women there sitting there like eating it all up. Like, we're just happy to have you here. Nobody listens to our podcast, and somehow we got the Vice President of the United States on. You know why? Because nobody else wants to talk to her. And so they're like, oh yeah, you were playing three-dimensional chess there. Yeah, I was playing three-dimensional chess. Holy cow, what does regular chess look like for you? If that was three-dimensional chess, the bar is very, very low for whatever regular chess looks like. God forbid checkers. Oh my goodness. We Whew, we caught a lucky break on that one, America. We would have been probably sitting in the lower IQ points of world leaders had Kamala been elected, but thankfully we're not there, and thankfully we're getting this country back on track. Speaking of hearkening back to the past, Michelle Obama is also doing interviews, which we're going to talk about in just a little bit. The tragic scenario of all of her privilege as the First Lady of the United States of America. She's going on like an apology tour. I don't know what she's doing, but some funny clips have emerged from those speaking engagements, and we will bring them to you right after the break. TPT at TPUSA.com. Don't go. We'll be right back after this. Welcome back to Turning Point Tonight. We're together. We are charting the course of America's cultural comeback. TPT at TPUSA.com is the email address. Also, go subscribe to our YouTube channel where you get unseen, exclusive content that doesn't even make it into the show. That's how spicy and aggressive those takes are on our One Last Point segment that only can be seen on YouTube, Rumble, Facebook, X, Instagram, all of the other social media accounts. But you got to go there. You can't watch it here because we just don't have enough time. Because specifically, we want to talk about Michelle Obama. Probably not the presidential candidate for the libs in 2028, but not entirely sure. She actually, if I were going to be worried about somebody, I would be worried about her, not because she has good ideas or some sort of political acumen. It's the stupidity of the libs that go, hooray, we can elect a black woman for the first time. Well, what does she think about things? We don't care. She's the first black woman to be elected president. And I would say, no, it's actually probably KJP last cycle. I think 3 years Joe Biden was just completely non-compos mentis. And she was actually running the country, which is probably explains a lot of the bad things that have happened in the last administration. But anyways, Michelle Obama is working on another book. Sorry, is going to release another book if it hasn't come out already. Honestly, I don't care if it has. But she's on a speaking tour going around on all the podcasts. And there's so many different avenues here. I don't know how this lady who has this podcast. I don't understand the appeal. I've watched 30 seconds of it and realized for myself I don't get it. But nevertheless, Michelle Obama appeared on this lady's podcast and said this about the tragic scenario of her and all of the privilege that comes with being the first lady. Watch this.
Yeah. Well, I didn't really have that choice as first lady.
Of course.
Right.
Yeah.
Every day, every time I was up, as we called it, I was up for the public.
Yes.
And the days were long. So as you mentioned, to save time.
Yes.
I know having a glam team, a trifecta, it feels like a luxury, but it was a necessity.
Yes.
There's absolutely no way that I would be able to do my hair and makeup and have clothes ready that fit, because rare is the woman that can live off the rack.
Yes.
Yeah, it was such an awful situation she had with her 3-person glam team, or trifecta. You got the stylist, you got the hair, you got the makeup every single day. Which, by the way, apparently she still uses, clearly going on these podcasts with, I don't know, clearly a stylist and hair and makeup. So, well, that didn't go away. So it wasn't necessarily just the functionality of it. Admit it, you liked it. She liked it just a little bit. I understand to a certain extent the idea of functionality. There are things that I get to do that make things a lot easier that some would see as a luxury, and yeah, sometimes it is a luxury, but I understand the idea of functionality. But don't throw it in the, this is actually a burden, because that's really the tone she was setting here. It was actually a burden that I had people at my every whim to get everything for me. It was every single day. Yeah, being the president is a difficult job for the president and his entire family. Spoiler alert, like that's kind of what you signed up for. You don't have to run for president of the United States, by the way. So, save the, it was just so hard. It was a time-saving thing. And again, I actually understand to an extent the whole time-saving thing. But don't sit here and pretend, or at least set the tone that it is actually not as easy as you think, having an entire team to do everything for me. Wasn't as easy as you think, says Michelle Obama. That's going to do it for us here today at Turning Point Tonight. Happy Veterans Day. Thank you to each and every one of you who have served. We greatly appreciate the sacrifices you and your family have made. So happy Veterans Day. We will see you tomorrow, same time, different place. We're going to be at the Turning Point headquarters in Phoenix, Arizona. See you tomorrow. God bless America. Well, that's a bad idea that for some reason people might think is a good idea. It's one last point. I don't think, let me preface this by saying I don't think this was run up the flagpole as high as I think a lot of the media is pretending that it is. But the idea of a 50-year mortgage and broader than that, the idea of longer terms on loans is a terrible idea. One, because it really doesn't change the price per month paid by somebody. It really just changes the price at which they're paying for. Let me say that more succinctly. If I have, let's just say, a 5-year loan on a car, right? I can get a 10-year loan on that car. I'm not sure who would give it to me, but let's just say I'm able to get somebody to underwrite a 10-year loan on a car. Well, if I'm already willing to make the payments that a 5-year loan would be, then anybody selling a car would just increase the price of the car if I'm willing to pay for it for 10 years. And a car is not necessarily even the best example because it's a depreciating asset. But in terms of like an actual, like a house, if you're going to say that somebody is willing to pay X amount of money per month, let's just say $2,000 per month for the mortgage on a house, that's the amount they're willing to pay on that house every single month. It doesn't really matter what the price of the house is. It matters, unless you're buying in cash, but we're not really talking about people buying in cash specifically because of mortgages. But if you are going to buy a house, you're really just looking, can I afford the monthly payment? That's what I look at. You look at the price, but you look at the price relative to what the monthly mortgage payment would be, or the interest rates are. Basically, you have a certain amount of money you make every month, and that's what you use to calculate whether or not you can afford that house. If you stretch the term longer than the 30-year standard, well, the monthly payment that I'm willing to pay doesn't really change, and therefore the house price will just go up because people are already decided they're willing to pay X amount of money per month, right? The idea is that, okay, so if a house is $1 million, and I recognize not every house is $1 million, and, California is a lot different than other places around the country, but just round numbers. If a house is $1 million, and let's just say your monthly mortgage payment is $6,000 a month. Again, I know it's steep. I probably shouldn't be using like Orange County pricing, but let's just say that's the case. If somebody says, well, let's stretch out that 30-year mortgage into a 50-year mortgage, all of a sudden, your house price is going to go up because you've already been willing to make the $6,000 a month payment. It's not like the price of the monthly fee is going to go down. The price of the house is just going to go up, and therefore is a nothing for affordability. And this is a bigger, longer kind of discussion. Right now, so we film these every day after the actual show, talking about the 50-year mortgage thing. And it's a hot topic today, but if this ends up airing on the actual show, when we take a day off or something, it might be seemingly irrelevant. But I think the push for longer term mortgages has been around for way longer than this new iteration of it is. And I think, I don't even necessarily want to call it a bad idea. It's just not going to work, right? Like if you have a longer term on a loan, that affects the monthly cost. But we've already, as a consumer, have decided what we're willing to pay for that monthly cost. So if that monthly cost payment doesn't fluctuate really at all because the market's already decided that, well, the price of the house is just going to go up, right? $6,000 a month. If you're willing to pay that for $1 million house at a 30-year mortgage, well, you'd be willing to pay $6,000 a month, even though you'd like it to be less. So then the $1 million house now becomes $1.5 million because the term on the loan has changed. I hope that's like put succinctly enough. I don't entirely know if I'm explaining it the best. Glenn is nodding his head. He does understand the economics behind this. I'm just not entirely sure I'm explaining it as concisely. I think I've explained it well, but not as concisely as I think it probably should be able to be explained. Glenn, you've done well, just your car loan. We talked last week, 2 weeks ago, last week, whatever that was, about
It was a couple weeks ago. We talked about when you purchased your most recent car.
Yeah.
And the loan, and that went into details of like how you paid cash for it and how people got weird because they make less money because they don't make any interest on a loan payment if you pay for it all up front.
Glenn, do you have the statistics that you put up on what a 50-year mortgage and a 30-year mortgage at a fixed rate would be? Because you had some pretty interesting statistics for the show, but didn't actually make it onto the show.
5 minutes of research, and and I was already suspicious. Give me a second to look that up, but it was interesting. And the article I found on just some mortgage website, because if you work in mortgages, you write about it on your blog. You're probably pretty into that.
Yep.
But the idea was not only will the price go up, like you said, but the interest rate will go up, because when you take out a loan to buy anything, somebody, usually a bank, has to be willing to temporarily give you custody of those assets to do things with them in the hopes that you'll pay them back plus interest, which is their incentive to loan you anything to begin with.
Yeah.
So if it's a very risky loan, chances are you'll pay more interest. If it's not super risky, you'll probably pay less interest. And their point was, one, you'll probably pay more interest because of a 50-year loan. Like, how can anyone reasonably predict? Like I was telling you before we started filming, if I was to purchase a home with a 50-year loan, I don't know that I'll be alive to finish paying it off in 50 years. I hope it's theoretically possible, but I'd be in my 90s. So like and you got to think, like, this occurs to me after a few minutes of thinking about it. A bank that loans money professionally, they would look at me as a risk. Like,
why would you
what if
write
this
that?
guy dies? Like, what, who knows what shape any of us will be in 50 years. So their point. Oh, go ahead.
Well, or, and not to get into the accusations of predatory lending here, but maybe, what if I look at it the other way around? What if I look at you and say, okay, 50 years, he's probably going to be dead before that loan comes entirely due, in which case, is it a default? Do I then get the house back as the lender? Like, how does that work? I would happily have you pay 40 years of a mortgage and then get the house back if I were the institution.
That's true. But like, as time goes on, like, you got to think, if someone's really bad with money and they manage to get any type of house loan, like, reality will find them out after a few years. They're not going to fool you for 15 years. Like, if you could fool someone for 15 years, you might just be good with money. You know?
You might accidentally be good at it.
If you're paying off a 50-year, and the statistic, I've got it on the screen in front of me here, was under these conditions, it was like a $400,000 loan, which would be great. I live in Orange County, so that's not realistic, but a $400,000 loan, 30-year fixed at 6% interest, you'd be paying about $23.98 a month, so almost $2,400 a month. But a 50-year fixed loan at 7% interest, you'd be paying $2,406 a month. It's like an $8 difference in your monthly payments. But the big difference, and that's without the loan size changing, but the big difference is the amount of each payment, that is the premium versus interest. That's the key, because the 50-year loan, a lot more of each payment is paying off interest on the loan and not so much the actual premium of the house.
Well, you did the math. Go ahead and tell them what the math is.
That is pretty much it. And I'm not a homeowner, so I don't have a super in-depth grasp of this.
You said specifically, meanwhile, you would pay $1 million over the course of 50 years just in interest versus the 30-year loan at a 6%. Did you give those numbers when I was zoning out?
I copy and pasted this part of the article. And
no, I'm just saying right now, did you tell the audience? I think
I didn't.
That's where it gets interesting.
You end up paying so much more in interest over the course of 50 years.
Yeah, like $600, almost, over $500,000 more in interest over the course of 50 years, which is not a small amount of money. That's $500,000 is not something to sneeze at. It's not a rounding error. It is a big chunk of money. So yeah, the idea that, and again, I think I said at the beginning, I don't think the administration is like hard pressed on this. It sounded like, I think it was a New York Post article that I read right before we started recording this episode, was something along the lines of that the upper level cabinet administration, where they were kind of like, oh, well, hold on, this is not something that we're pushing. It just kind of was being talked about on, I don't want to say the ground floor, but not necessarily. It didn't make it to the president, right? Because I think if anybody understands mortgages and financing, it's probably Donald Trump, and I would imagine he would go, "What? Why would this help? This is not going to help." But we'll see. I don't know.
It would be shocking to me if this became a big thing, because as more and more people would theoretically buy into this and have 50 years, like that would tie up a lot of money in loans, and a lot of money that could be spent elsewhere in the economy would then be dedicated to finishing paying off these uber long period loans.
That's smart. Yeah,
and
that's a good idea.
That would have other deleterious effects like down the road that maybe aren't apparent yet. And yeah, maybe let's say they finagled the interest rates and it ended up being a few $100s less a month, and then more people said, okay, great, like we can buy a home because we can afford this now monthly. They would not think long term, I'll lose $1 million or I'll pay double the price of the home itself. But they can't buy other things. Like this will affect 30 years down the road. They have kids, they want to send them to college, but college is really expensive and that money's going somewhere else.
So. Yeah. It seems obvious to me. I kind of hope by the time, if this actually airs on the TV program, I hope that this has all been like put to bed. But at the same time, this has kind of been an idea that's been around. 40-year mortgages, 50-year mortgages. Maybe we should try it out. That doesn't seem like it's going to help at all. So come to one last point for your mortgage and financial advice, and probably the only place that you're going to hear a producer use words like deleterious.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate your insight. This has been One Last Point. God bless America.